Formula One's next GP is bringing game-changing upgrades specifically for the championship contenders, and this could define the rest of the 2024 season and whether it goes down to the wire. McLaren and Red Bull are the championship contenders right now, and looking at it more in detail, it's Lando and Max. Both teams have talked about upgrades that are going to change the rest of the season. McLaren has obviously been on track to be the best car as of lately, but the Red Bull did make a bit of a step in Singapore, and this step is supposed to bring great confidence to Max Verstappen. So I first want to talk about Red Bull and the upgrades that they're bringing, because we have a lot of detail that's been talked about it, and specifically what these upgrades are going to do. And then we're going to talk about the McLaren, who has a specific strategy that I want to go over as well. So Red Bull is taking a big gamble in Austin to make these upgrades work and hopefully change around what has been a pretty lopsided last 5 to 6 races for McLaren. Christian Horner has talked about and hopes that these upgrades actually inspire confidence in Max, because the car has not been anything to the liking of Max as of lately. The car has lost its balance. They recently brought a diffuser upgrade in Baku, which did help the car, at least from Checo's side, and Max knew that the setup, even going into the race, was messed up, as the language he used is not allowed anymore from the FIA. But his confidence did grow in Singapore, and he said that the car was actually pretty well balanced, still missing a bit of downforce, and obviously their tire wear is nowhere near competitive to that of the McLaren. They traced the reason as to why these upgrades haven't been working all the way to Spain of last year, which is just incredible to think that the RB19 was so dominant even though the car wasn't even perfectly set up. Also shows the talent of Max and how good he can actually be in a car that is made for him. They got a really good understanding in Monza as to why the car is not working, so this development path that they've made now coming in Coda is pretty much based off of what they've lately seen in Monza. But now to talk about these upgrades, what is this big package coming that's supposed to revolutionize the RB20? Well, we've seen side pod upgrades to the car. We've seen them change the inlet a lot of little defining details, but we've also seen them go through 3 to 4 different floors, which is different to the rest of the grid. The only team that's done that is Mercedes, and McLaren has only kept 1 floor pretty much from Miami. The Ferrari car has also changed its floor a good amount, but we're figuring out that these cars are super complex, and you want to change very little at a time to figure out the best setup for it. But Red Bull is going for a drastic change. Can they be the first to make it work? Let's see, because what's coming to the Coda GP is a new front wing, which will implement obviously the flexing that we've seen in 2024. Ferrari just brought that in Singapore, and as we can see from this video, the front wing is flexing, giving it a bit of downforce in the high speed, but also letting a bit loose so the straight line speed can be a bit stronger. Red Bull is the only car to not actually have the flexing in these top 4, so it will be bringing this. It's been talked about a lot. Finally, it's coming into Coda, and there will be a revised floor, and I've spoken about this before. This should be a mix of what they had in the beginning of the season and the latest upgrade that they actually brought to Zandvoort, which was a different floor. Yet again, that didn't work to what they expected, so it's supposed to bring those pieces together. Specifically talking, they want to change the front of the floor, where those Venturi tunnels touch, in that edge right before we get into the undercut of the side pod. That is where they mostly want to work on this floor, where the air first hits the underfloor. This front section is actually meant to better facilitate the turbulence caused at the rear of the car, which has been an issue as of lately. And with more sliding comes more tire wear, and they really do think it's down to the balance for the drivers to actually improve this tire wear. A lot of teams have spoken about that, and they say that it's not necessarily up to the car, but it's more so if the drivers can drive in a better balance, then obviously the tire wear is going to be better, and this is a normal and easy solution. They already decided they're not doing no special liveries because they want to save down on the weight, and they know that this championship run is going to go down to the end. It is a sprint race in Coda, so a lot of points are up on the table, especially if Max can't finish within the top 5. All eyes are going to be specifically on this team, because if it doesn't work, Max has a big job ahead of him. And yes, he does have a big point gap, but it's easily overcomable if one DNF happens or he's out of the points. It would take a lot for that to happen, but every team is bringing a big upgrade here. A downgrade to the car can really hurt them. But that brings us to the McLaren, the strongest car of the year. Lando showed in Singapore When he spread his wings, this car was pretty much 50 seconds ahead of the rest of the grid on a high downforce circuit. They have been preparing critical upgrades for a while now. Andrea Stella has talked about these upgrades being in the pipeline, but not being brought to the car because they're scared that the actual correlation between what they bring and on track could result in the same problem that's been happening with the Mercedes car. Mercedes brought a big floor upgrade to Spa. They took it off in the middle of that weekend just so they could run the old floor spec again, and they ended up actually winning the race. Now there's a lot of factors there though. A lot of it also has to do that in Belgium, the dirty air was very strong. When Oscar did have some clean air, he was pretty easily able to catch up to the Mercedes car, showing yet again how strong the McLaren was on any type of track surface or layout. It's just been this car. But the strategy for the team has been specific to itself. The floor strategy that they've gone along with, and as I stated before, it's only been one floor from Miami, they've only changed the floor edge. The complexity of these cars has shown that when you change too much, all of a sudden it's very hard to actually correlate the car quickly on track. So their upgrade strategy has been minimal effort put into the floor design because they have correlated, and what's always been the goal with these regulations is to get most of the floor to actually do the downforce for you. The initial goal with the regulations was to do 50% the floor, 25% at the front wing, 25% at the rear wing. Well, McLaren literally has 70% of their floor doing the work in the downforce, at least said by their team. And the upgrade that's been so critical and huge has been a floor upgrade, but they haven't brought it yet because of what I said before. The risk over reward is too high. It was supposed to be a higher downforce floor, which is pretty crazy to think if they're already generating 70%, how much more can they really extract from that floor? We've seen the tweaks they've done in the rear wing, we've seen that flexi front wing, we've even seen the little engine cover details they've done to continue this car on a great balance, as well as keeping most of the downforce on the underfloor so the drivers are super confident. Their tire wear is incredible, but the drivers have to drive pretty effortlessly. Lando has talked about this in multiple GPs, that when the car is set up correctly, it almost feels effortless to drive, and that he's always aiming for that goal. Baku was one of those tracks where they weren't able to nail the setup, also due to some inconvenience of the yellow flag coming out when it did, resulted in them starting far back, but he still ended up finishing P4 in that race, which is just pretty ridiculous to think. That little floor edge upgrade they did bring in Zandvoort has just been the start of what could be a very drastic upgrade here in Austin. And as I've said, it's game changing because it could actually put them further back down, or it gives them a defining gap and it's all up to Lando to just finish up in P1 and Oscar to finish P2. The approach has even been talked about from other teams. Aston Martin has looked into this, and Mike Crack has said if you look at their development path and what they've done, you can see that the complexity of these cars has resulted in teams bringing less upgrades but more little complex details. And while the rear wing did get banned, it was a very innovative solution. It's pretty sad that Formula One doesn't allow for solutions like this because it's nice to see innovation again. Before this final phase, these last 6 races, this will be the defining race, and these upgrades coming for the McLaren, which is in the floor. That is at least what is rumored right now, but we're pretty certain on the Red Bull that it's the front wing and the floor design specifically in the front that will be brought to this car. That should be the game changer, and we'll have to see if Max can actually competitively be up there with Lando. Hopefully a nice little fight, because he's got to finish in P2 every single time if Lando finishes in P1. It'll be interesting to see. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.